All right, BetBash 4 is in the books, and here to share what you need to know about last week's happenings at Circa Las Vegas, fellow live podcast hosts at BetBash, hosts of the Always Betting podcast, making an overdue return to Props and Hops, Pisky and Godfather. Guys, fortunately, it's not a case of long time no see, but it has been a minute since I first had you on this show. Welcome back to Props and Hops.
Thanks Matt. A lot, Matt. Yeah, it's good to be back. It was great seeing you in Vegas. It's always nice to touch base with you and the rest of the gang, all the betting boys and women. Thanks for having us on. This is fun.
100%.
Pisky, I see that you... Yeah, thank you. I didn't mean to cut you off, Godfather. I will clean this up as we go. It's always fun having multiple guests on. We'll give plenty of space for both of you guys here. Pisky, I am seeing you may be a step or two ahead of me when it comes to the BetBash recovery, because it looks like you may have come prepared with a couple of beverages to get this conversation going on the right note. Godfather, I'm not sure about you. I feel like I could use about a month of just straight sleep and water at this point, but you guys do it right.
I told him 10 minutes ago, I'm like, hey, it's Props and Hops. You bring a beer to the show. You don't disappoint. We're invited guests here. So yeah, I went with a wicked awesome IPA it's a New England style IPA from Nickelbrook Brewing Co. I'm not sure where that's from. Burlington, Ontario. So a local one. It looked like the Carolina Panthers there. That's what got my attention. Football season. And then this one is a Blue Wave dry hopped lager. And it had the Blue Jays logo on, a little representation of Toronto. There we go. I'm ready to roll.
Cheers. I got a plain Heineken.
Heineken.
Well, that's not. Somebody drank all my Peroni this weekend. There was birthdays, and don't rile me up on other people's show.
The Legacy Club had Peronis. That's the only reason why I was drinking it. I much prefer Heineken. Shout out to Rob Pizzola for making me say that.
All right, well, you guys have outdone me on my own show. I will say I got home about 24 hours ago from a 10-day excursion in Vegas, about double the length of BetBash. So trying to give my liver and the rest of my body a break, but I really appreciate the spirit that you've brought to kick this thing off on the right note. So I've got water in here. I'll do better next time. But from the U.S. to Canada, cheers to you guys. Great to have you back on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having us on. 10 days, Matt. What in God's name were you doing in Vegas for 10 days? I thought only morons like me spent more than 4 or 5 days in Vegas.
That's a good question. So I got a text from one of my best friends a couple months ago asking if I'd be in Vegas in August. And I said, as a matter of fact, I will be. He was like, great, I've got a conference I'll be in town for the week of August 12th. And I immediately realized, well, I will be there the week of August 5th. And ended up parlaying it into an extended stay. I have another very dear friend who is a doctor out in Vegas. So as a lifeline, I was able to recharge at his house in the suburbs of Vegas this past weekend.
Nice.
And then show up on the strip with a couple days and nights left in the tank to see my buddy who was visiting for a conference. I told him I couldn't do the full week, but made it till Wednesday afternoon. And then here we are back in California.
Nice. Well, kudos to you, man. It's not easy, especially after what we went through at BetBash. It was pedal to the metal since the moment we landed. And it is kind of shocking that I'm doing this right now. I told myself I'm having a dry rest of August, but you know what? When in Rome, props and hops, man. You got to do it, right, Godfather?
No
yeah,
you sent the message. I went looking. I came prepared.
Well, I appreciate you guys coming prepared to this forum, especially because you posted a great recap of your own on the Always Betting podcast feed and YouTube channel yesterday. That one featured our mutual friend Tabitha, as well as GRP Wins. Highly recommend listening to any of those catching this conversation if you haven't listened already. And for the purposes of this conversation, I'll aim to advance rather than repeat too much of that episode. And to any of our audience that may be joining live across Twitter and YouTube, I'm just now realizing that apparently you now need a verified Twitter account to go live via StreamYard. So the Twitter live turnout might be less than usual. I'll see about getting that in order for the NFL season. A bit of preseason form on my part. But to any of you who are with us live, nevertheless, thank you for tuning in. Feel free to jump in the chat with any thoughts or questions. We'll be happy to weave that into the show wherever possible. Guys, to kick it off, I know, again, you did your recap episode yesterday on the Always Betting Pod. But if we're to think high level, about a 30-second initial elevator pitch on your overall thoughts on the BetBash experience, how would you sum it up?
Godfather, do you want to go first since it was your first BetBash, or do you want me to?
Sure,
Go
absolutely.
ahead.
It was
the floor is yours.
Yeah, it was my first BetBash, and basically I lived the previous two BetBashes through Pisky Positivo social media moments, personal conversations, and honestly, I because I never know when he's BSing me or not, so I didn't know what to expect. I thought he was overplaying himself as usual. So going to BetBash as my first time, I mean, I didn't know what to expect. And he warned me that, he spent all of BetBash 3 fielding questions on where is the Godfather. So again, I just thought he was trying to break him, et cetera, et cetera. But I wasn't at circa 5 minutes where I got my first Godfather. And it was Goofy Noofy, and I'm like, oh my God. And then it just went from there. So for me, in short, it was a great first BetBash. I got to meet a lot of people that, again, you interact with on social media, on Twitter, and then you start to put faces and people to posts and their content, and for me it was a wonderful experience.
Glad to hear it. Hope it was the first of many. And Pisky, I believe this was your third BetBash experience, all three in Vegas. So if that's correct, how was it for you this time around?
It was my third. I am a seasoned veteran now of BetBash, and there's nothing I hate more than agreeing with my co-host over there. But I got to do it this time. I got to piggyback his comments. You know what? BetBash for me is about the people. It's all about getting together with everyone, like-minded individuals, meeting new people, meeting the people that have been DMing me for 11 straight months. I've never seen a face, and they come and introduce themselves, and we share a cocktail together. We share some laughs together. We make fun and get the Godfather all riled up. There's nothing better than that. And yeah, I think for me, honestly, it's always going to be about the people, and I've been home in Toronto for less than a week, and I already can't wait to be back there in 2025.
Yeah, and not too much to deviate from those remarks on my end. My initial thought is that Spanky and his team just continue to deliver. It's such a welcoming environment for people of all experience levels and across all facets of betting. It was really nice this time to see some representation from a legislator, a regulator, and some legends in the offshore market. So BetBash has always been a great opportunity to go in depth, but I feel encouraged by the fact that it appears to also be becoming a better opportunity to explore the industry's breadth.
Well said. Absolutely.
Well said,
It's I met people there that I met a guy as young, and I forget his name because I met so many goddamn people that were all beauties, by the way. If you're going to BetBash, you're going to meet nothing but good people. There was no assholes there. I can guarantee you that. Yeah. And if there ever is an asshole, you come and talk to the Godfather and we set the record straight. No problem. But I met a guy there as young as 22 years old. Matt, 22 years old. What were you doing at 22? I was a moron at 22. So 22 years old, he's up there
I wasn't even
conversing.
Betting yet. I was just starting to bet.
Right? And he's up there conversing with people that have been doing this for a very long time, that are very smart, that can show you the direction in which to go in, and he showed up there alone at 22. That's wild. That completely blew my mind, and I told him, man, you ever need any guidance, anything, like, I'm not the smart, I'm probably one of the least smartest ones here at this convention, but I answer all my DMs, so if you ever need anything, you DM me and I'll see about working it out for you. But yeah, very impressive.
Well, I think we had a similar thought when it came to our initial responses to that overall look back at BetBash. We might have some different answers as we go throughout this conversation. And the first area where we might deviate a bit, thinking about this having been BetBash 4, Pisky, I'll ask you one new thing on the BetBash agenda this year that you hope continues. And then Godfather, as the first-time attendee, your favorite thing about how the event was structured. So Pisky, let's lead off with you as the seasoned vet of previous BetBashes. Favorite new thing on the agenda this time around that you hope we see BetBash 5 and onward?
New thing for me, my favorite thing, hands down, was the golfing event. It was crazy ass early, okay? I had to set an alarm at 5:30 a.m. to get out of my room, to get to Circa, to meet up with everyone for 6:15. The bus left at exactly 6:15, so there was no room for deviation whatsoever. But that event, it seems like just a golf match, but the level of networking you can get done on the golf course is unmatched. And I'm a veteran of this conference. I'm also a veteran of speed networking. Speed networking, as valuable as it is, it's very tough to have a conversation in that room because it's so goddamn loud, and you got a very short amount of time. But shout out to my guys, Chris in Pittsburgh and Matt in Northern Edmonton. These guys are my friend. Like, I already work with Chris a little bit, but Matt is a brilliant guy, super sharp, and we were able to connect throughout the game. I'm a terrible golfer, but they put me under their wing. They made me feel like part of the team. They used a couple of my drives. I was very thankful for that. But yeah, just getting to know those guys, and again, expanding the social circle is so goddamn important in this industry. So I have to go with the golfing event for me.
I heard Spanky speak to the golf outing on BetBash Recap that he streamed live. I think that may have been yesterday as well. And I recall him noting that it was great, but around the 12th hole, when the temperature was just continuing to increase, it was punishing heat. People had already been out for hours at that point. So the thought was that perhaps next year they might do 9 holes. Pisky, any thought as to a potential 9-hole golf outing at a future BetBash, which might also allow for a slightly later start time?
Yeah, you know what? 9 holes. I was actually kind of dizzy after the second hole because I was all screwed up. I was coming from Europe, so I was on all kinds of different time zones. Here I am cracking a high noon. It's 7:58 a.m., which was 10:58 Eastern time, so I don't feel like that much of a degenerate. But it was hot. It was very hot. I didn't think I was going to make it, but again, I had a solid team, and I couldn't let them down. And yeah, I think around the 16th hole, I looked at my phone, and it was 42 degrees Celsius. I'm sorry, we're Canadian. We do the Celsius thing. I'm not sure what that translates. It's got to be over 120, I think.
Well,
yeah, so that was tough. So 9 holes, I'd be totally open to 108. Okay, so not even 120, but it was nuts. For us Canadians, us guys that are used to, that are used to the cold, nuts. So yeah, I'd be open to 9 holes. I think you could still get the networking done there. And there's also a thing called Top Golf in Las Vegas that maybe we could do something there. I don't know. Again, it would be a great networking event, and that's what you're there for. No one's there to see my golf swing, because if they were, they would never come back. But everyone's there to just hang out, have a good time, have a couple drinks, and the golf event was really, really good for that.
Godfather, I'll get your thoughts in a moment. I'll note that while Pisky is starting with a highlight from an early wake-up call, my favorite thing that was new this year was the 11 a.m. start time on Thursday. My feedback had consistently been in previous years, let's get these days started a bit later. I do love the seminars and panels, but I would take a lighter schedule in exchange for later mornings to maximize time for sleep, maybe a little bit of exercise, or perhaps just more networking via the unofficial parts of the BetBash experience. So from a 5:30 a.m. wake-up call for golf to an 11 a.m. start time, maybe we can see a bit more of both of those ends of the spectrum in future years. Godfather, how about your favorite part about how this year's event was structured?
You know what? I will agree that the fast pace of this structure could be difficult and was harder and harder to adhere to as the week went on, without question. So I am totally down with your suggestion of the 11 a.m. Those couple of extra hours, whether we like to admit it or not, are absolutely a necessity. For me, I really liked the seminars. A couple of them were a highlight for me, like to meet Sammy P and he was the moderator for Roxy Roxborough. That was a great one for me. So I hope future Bet Bashes continue in that vein where, maybe not as many, and maybe some breaks in between for people to mingle, or maybe go and get a bite to eat, or, something. Because, you're on the go at this thing, which was an eye opener for me, it being my first one. So, yeah, I would agree with you, Matt, that, some flexibility perhaps in the scheduling would be well served. And, the third, or is it the fourth day that with the actual panels, that was pretty good. I like that they were spaced out later on in the day, and we were able to, we had pre-selected them, but I didn't feel rushed. But the first 2 days I did. I gotta admit.
That's fair. And also having time to grab a bite to eat. The Friday panels are broken up with a lunch that is provided right outside the main room there. It's
and I enjoyed that
pretty solid
as well.
spread.
That's a good point. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know there was a bit of calling out the BetBash team for, I think it was chili dogs for BetBash 2 in Vegas during the panels. A significant upgrade to the
That's
option.
old news, man. Spanky has turned it up. So without question. And another thing I did like, I like the informality of the watch party aspect of BetBash, because it's kind of like everybody's sort of just mingling and, watching the games, and I a little bit less formal, a formal setting, and the spread was good there too.
Yeah, that's usually my go-to move. If there's an open bar with a decent spread, to take care of the food first. A, you never know if the food's going to go and it's going to be too late to get back to it. Yeah. And B, it's a good way to give yourself a nice base before you may have a few beverages. 100%. So
100%.
All around, definitely enjoyed the spread at Stadium Swim as well. It's clear through the beginning of this conversation that we all had a great time and have, by and large, very positive things to say about BetBash. But Godfather, I appreciate you also shared some feedback about things that maybe in your opinion could be improved moving forward. And I think that's the name of the game. Each year there have been things that have been improved, and through conversations like this, maybe we can help to drive further improvement for BetBash 5 and beyond. So guys, if we want to think about one thing that could be improved that stands out from the experience this past week, Pisky, let's start with you again. Anything that you would like to see done differently come next year?
There was one thing, and I got to give credit where credit is due, because this was passed on to me from a friend of ours. Shout out to the tax man. He said, because we had a weird turnout at our podcast, our live podcast. So before going into it, there was like signs that it was sold out. So the Godfather and I were kind of shitting our pants. We're not used to that. We're used to screaming at each other like this on camera in different areas and different houses. So doing it like side by side was already going to be weird. And then we got word that it was sold out, and that really made us shit our pants. So going in, we're like, okay, I make the roadmap for everything. I said, listen, we're going to really feed off the live crowd. And then because it was so late in the event, I don't know, people got sidetracked maybe, or just there was other events that opened up. So the turnout wasn't quite what was advertised. And that was a little bit tricky. Yeah. So the taxman said, oh, that sucks that you guys had to deal with that. But he goes, my recommendation would be, Matt, how we had a seminar, then a break for an hour, then a seminar, and we had to select our seminars. He said, so us podcasters, because I like that group that you set up, that we're all able to exchange information, that was brilliant. But he said, maybe to make it fair for you podcasting guys, that in the hour break in between the informational seminars, that's when we do the podcast. So people can, if they want to go grab a drink, if they want to go to the washroom, if they want to go grab a bite to eat, and they come in and see you guys for 10, 15 minutes, it's more of a constant flow so that people don't have to designate time. And I think, again, another thing with us podcasters is that we're going to put it online after our show. So a lot of people were saying, well, we love you guys and we support you guys, but obviously, and I was encouraging everyone to do this, our podcast was at the same time as Chinese Mike's sports betting partnerships.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, guys, you got to go to that, man. There is so much to learn there. So
100%.
that's what I would take a play out of the Taxman's book and say that maybe they should stagger the podcast in between to give some people a little bit of entertainment during the breaks in between the informational seminars.
That's an interesting point, because I think Spanky, reading feedback during his live episode yesterday, noted that some people thought that the breaks were a bit too long between sessions. Some people thought the breaks could have been longer. Of course, if you have 600, 700 people, you're not going to please everybody. But one thing Spanky underscored was that those breaks were imperative while they had everybody in that general area to also give people a chance to mingle with sponsors and make sure that the sponsors of the event had a chance to get support and see some ROI. So I think a big part of those breaks that we had was to give people and to give the sponsors that opportunity. But to your point, maybe if podcasts are going on, it doesn't have to be something people sign up for. It's casually happening. People might duck in and duck out, but just to provide a little added entertainment during that time, worth considering for sure. I'm going to call out something that overall is still a fantastic event. Godfather, I think you said on the Always Betting podcast, it was your favorite part of the whole week. When it comes to the Hall of Fame dinner, again, outstanding event. And I really loved the short and sweet in memoriam video they added this year. Of course, it featured David Malinsky, so that was near and dear to my heart. But overall, the dinner did feel quite long on my end. And maybe it's the table I was at, but dinner was served rather late. I loved the main course. I think it was a beef Wellington, some chicken, mashed potatoes, some veggies. Really enjoyed the food, but I got it at about 10 p.m. And then the staff started preparing to end the event before 11 p.m. I was asked multiple times if they could take my plate while I was still actively eating. So it just got a little bit interesting at that point. Also, they had 2 breaks during the 4-hour dinner, but the second one didn't come until after 9 of the 10 inductees were already in and had given their speeches. So I thought they maybe could have spaced out the breaks a bit more efficiently. At a certain point, I was waiting for that second break. I finally had to get up to go to the bathroom during one induction. I felt terrible walking out of the room during a moment like that, but it's the only part of the Sports Gambling Hall of Fame that I've missed in its first 2 years. I'm not trying to suggest by saying the dinner was rather long that we limit the inductees to shorter speeches. I think it's important, especially for them, to give them that moment to really soak up the chance to shine. Very well deserved on their ends, but maybe a bit of room to tighten things up a bit beyond that.
I would agree with you 100%, Matt. I think I just think the timing of the meal could absolutely be improved. I don't know, maybe we could have the appetizers going, right away or something. But I mean, I totally agree. A very good entree to be eaten past 10 o'clock was a bit much. And if if they're trying to clean up the dining hall at the same time that you may have gotten your plate even later than some, and so without question that could be cleaned up. That would be something that I would like to see improved as well.
You guys are bigger sports fans than I am. What's the typical number of inductees in, let's say, a football Hall of Fame or an NHL Hall of Fame? Is it as high as 10?
That's a good point. I'm
going to say if you include, so the ones that the Hall of Fame pick the inductees, and then there's also the Veterans Committee picks some. I think you would get up to 10, Pisk. Very easily.
You would get 10? Okay. I thought that it might be shorter, so that was kind of my suggestion. Maybe it's not 10 inductees, but they probably want to beef up the Hall of Fame because it's so new that, get a lot of people in there, so at least there's a lot of conversation about it. But I thought maybe you chop it down by 2 or 3, you know what I mean? 7, it would shorten everything. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I heard others saying at the Legacy Club afterward that maybe smaller classes could be better in future years. of course, with this being new, maybe there's a
Yes.
bottleneck of people to get through as this thing gets off the ground. Pisky, to your point about the professional sports leagues in real time, I did a quick search, and if I can trust Google's, Gemini AI answers for a quick query, it looks like NFL Hall of Fame classes have ranged anywhere from 3 to 20. So quite the spectrum there. But
Yeah.
I feel like with 10 being the max at BetBash, as this gets going, I would not be surprised at all to see some years with smaller classes, especially some of the committee members known to be pretty particular in terms of what gets a yes vote. And there is a pretty high bar in terms of the threshold needed. I think at least a 3/4 majority is needed of approval across the Hall of Fame selection committee. So yeah, fewer inductees might do the trick. Again, my complaint is in no way about the inductees giving long-winded speeches,
absolutely
or
not.
about just tightening up anything else where possible around the event itself. I realize it's a massive undertaking. This is year 2 of a brand new thing that Spanky and so many at Circa are doing. So overall, it's excellent. Just if we're looking for improvement at BetBash in some areas, maybe a bit of nitpicking on my end.
I think,
how did you Google that so fast? It looks like you didn't even look away. It just boom, you had the answer. That was incredible.
Because the guy's the pro.
Yeah, he's a pro. Wait,
Coming up
learn
on
from this
300
guy.
episodes, so
I need help like this. Godfather, let's go. Learn from Matt here. That was incredible.
What I was going to also add, I think a clear factor is that these are the first 2 Hall of Fame classes, and I think typically there was an example of the first couple of baseball Hall of Fame induction classes, and so I think there's room for the larger numbers to start off, and I think I believe as we continue along with the BetBash's future, that we might see those numbers dwindle down a little bit, kind of get your solid 30-40 guys in there, and then maybe we'll start seeing maybe 4 or 5 per year or something. Who knows?
What did you think of the classiness, Godfather? Because that's your first time, right? And I told you we got to dress up, and you probably thought I was pulling your chain again, like lying, like usual.
Yes.
But you look good. We all look good, right?
We all look good, absolutely.
And the
some people would say Godfather looked best.
Thank you. Thank you. As long as I look better than Pisk, I was happy. But no. In all seriousness,
but like what I'm saying, our shady little industry that has had a black eye in society since the beginning of time up until like 2.5 years ago. And now what? There's people like respected members of the community in tuxedos. I never thought I would see this for the sports betting industry. I've been in this industry since 2003. I never in a million years would have predicted that something like this takes place.
That's a very valid point, and I will say it just really quickly, Matt, as a first timer at BetBash, that's a real valid point. I didn't know what kind of shady people I was going to run into, right? But I can honestly say the vast majority of the people I met and came up and spoke to me were salt of the earth people and really genuinely solid humans. So for me, I can, again, I don't like agreeing with Pisky either. I can agree that is a solid part of BetBash. You are going to meet some really solid people.
How solid were the individuals at table 29?
They were the aberration. You know what I mean? They fit in with the type of peeps we don't want to associate with. 100%. That was a little.
All
that
right,
was negative.
One more question for you guys within the scope of the official BetBash event, so to speak, and then we can branch out a bit beyond that. But to close the loop, any other like standout moments within the scope of the official event that were highlight experiences you feel like are worth noting that we might not have touched on yet?
You know what? I'm a big fan of the after parties. So every night after all the festivities of BetBash are done, it is a known fact now in year 3 that you are to go upstairs to the Legacy Club, 60th floor, overlooking Las Vegas. You're going to go to the bar. You're going to talk to Dom. He's going to hook you up. Yeah. And you're going to drink some of the best cocktails in Las Vegas. with the best views in the best atmosphere, and you're going to do it with all, the great people of this industry. I love that it's become a thing now. Now, again, with the timing and everything, like, things get carried away. A guy like myself, I suffer from this rare condition called FOMO. So if I don't stay up till 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, I feel like I'm missing out. So for guys like me, the next mornings are a little rough. I screwed up. I missed speed networking. Apologies to everyone that I stood up on that speed networking thing. I went overboard again. But that is one of my favorite parts, is going up there and having drinks with everyone and just, celebrating life and this crazy ass industry that we're in.
Yeah, it's a tricky balance, because I feel like if you leave BetBash and you're not worn out, then you probably left quite a bit on the table. But if you burn yourself out too soon, you might not be able to maximize the whole experience. So you're kind of trying to thread the needle there. So I appreciate that balance that we're all trying to master over time. I'll note that within the scope of the official event, one of my favorite aspects we haven't touched on yet was the ability to connect with people after seminars they hosted. I did find the seminars very valuable overall, but really what stood out was direct access to the brilliant and friendly people right afterward. That only magnified the value in my book. Yeah. Examples would include Steve Fezzik and Dr. Chow from the Profiting from Injuries seminar, Bud Elliott right after the college football seminar, and then David Hill hosted a journalism and gambling seminar, pinch hitting on short notice. The originally scheduled host couldn't make it, and David Hill just knocked it out of the park. I did, by attending that seminar, miss maybe the most buzzworthy moment of the conference. I don't know if you guys were in the room for the American Bettors Voice seminar.
We were.
Okay. And I had a chance to rehash that and get Joe Brennan's perspective on this week's episode of Prime Suspects. Speaking of FOMO, I tend not to suffer from that a whole lot, but at a venue like BetBash, it's going to creep up. So that may be the one thing I wish I had experienced firsthand.
Yeah, it was intense. I'll just say that. And I'll piggyback on what you said, Matt. For me, a highlight was, again, you spoke about direct access. We were able to speak with Roxy Roxborough. And for me, that was really, really impressive. That was, within the scope of BetBash, as you put it, that was a highlight for me. Being able to talk to him one-on-one for like 5-10 minutes. He's so generous with his time. He's so sincere. And, he gave me a pen that it's fantastic. That was a highlight for me.
Your pen lights up?
Yeah, of course, man. He gave me the special one.
What the fuck, Roxy? Come on, man.
Yeah.
Me and Roxy are tight.
Yeah, there you go.
May the odds be with you?
Roxy.
Yeah. Yeah, so last year's pen, Matt, I had Roxy. I had the pleasure of being speed networking partners with Roxy at one point. He gave me a pen last year that I think is the most valuable advice in sports betting. And it is stay in action. Right? So never do the all-in thing. Never overextend yourself. The whole point of this game is you got to be long. You got to be marathon style. So I think Roxy nailed it with that slogan on his pen, and I still use that pen every single day of my life. Every time I'm jotting shit down, and it stares at me. That little saying, stay in action, and I think, honestly, it's the most valuable advice in this industry.
Well, Pisky, it's like you're reading my mind, because one of the next things I wanted to tee you guys up for would be the best bet that you made at BetBash, thinking this could be a bet on a sporting event, but it doesn't necessarily have to be.
Well, first, let me touch on that ABV thing first a little bit. I was there. I'll just tell you a quick story about it. The Godfather and I, we were kind of dragging ass after our podcast. A lot of ups and downs in terms of emotion. We popped over to the Plaza to grab a slice of pop-up pizza, which is, I think, one of the most underrated pizzas in Las Vegas.
Friend of ours.
Yeah, and so then we popped into the ABV. We were about 10 minutes late. We no sooner sat down, and that's when Joe Brennan from Prime Sportsbook went off. And you know what? A lot of people are going to dive into this and probably give him shit for it. It was aggressive. it was unexpected because the Godfather and I kind of wanted to go back to the room, but I'm like, well, dude, we can't stand up now. This guy's telling us something. But
if you stand up and leave when he's asking why more people aren't there.
Exactly.
Way.
We looked at each other. I'm like, don't move. No. Now is not the time. But you 100%. Know what? I think he's right. Right. Now, was he aggressive and nasty about it? Yes. But you know what? I grew up playing hockey in these aggressive, nasty environments. I know that's not the way anymore, but to me, like, yes, he was getting his point across. Yes, he was using expletives and swearing and everything like that. But you know what? I do a podcast with this guy, and that's all he does is swear. And we get in trouble for it all the time. So, you know what? I resonated with it. I'm fine that Joe had some passion there, and he was letting us have it. And you know what? I think the guy's right. We can't just sit back and let Spanky and everyone else that's on the ABV board do the heavy lifting, right? You got to be proactive. And I'm saying that as a Canadian, right? I want this thing to be expanded into the North American bettors voice so that I can jump on board because, the Godfather and I spent a season of Always Betting screaming about this and how we're getting limited and all this bullshit with sportsbooks. So it's a problem. And I agree with Joe. We have to do it as the bettors because, like you said, we have the fucking power. We have the money. So that's all I have to say about that.
Appreciate you interjecting there. And I guess before we circle back to my previous question, Godfather also having been in the room, according to Pisky, maybe being wired in a sense that level of intensity might be more the norm than some of the others in attendance would be used to. What was your experience during that moment?
Oh, I was like, I'm all about passion, and he was all about it. To me, it sounded like a guy that had conviction, and he believed what he was saying. He believed that it needs to be a concentrated group effort, and he was just really highlighting that, you know, the room was full for the speed networking, but was half empty for the American Bettors voice. And he wanted to know why, and he singled out some people, and I just found his genuine passion he got his point across, and I didn't have a problem with it myself.
Yeah, I think if there were younger people in attendance newer to the industry who may have been caught off guard as the person who asked the question that may have inspired I think Captain Jack's words were epic rant. Joe Brennan's words would be inspired oratory. But somebody like the person who I understand asked the question that got this all rolling. For context, for some who may not know, Joe Brennan, instrumental in PASPA's repeal in the United States, bringing legalized sports betting to states beyond Nevada. So he comes with a uniquely qualified point of view to weigh in on topics like this. And I did push back a bit on him in our Prime Suspects conversation where we talked about the episode, noting that maybe some people weren't in the room because, like me, they were at other seminars. There was another live podcast also happening at the same time. So yeah, some people were probably at the pool or getting ready to go to the pool or maybe at some tables. Fine. Again, by the third day of the event, not as many people are sticking around as we may have seen for something like speed networking. So yes, there could be a degree of people blowing it off, but there could be an element of people like myself who are actively engaged in BetBash official activity that just happened to be coinciding with the event. And he acknowledged trying to use certain factors for dramatic effect. But I think the underlying point, as you guys have said, was to try to inspire bettors to take it upon themselves to do their part. And of course, Spanky, Billy Walters, Richard Schutz, everybody with American Bettors voice seems to be going above and beyond to do all that they can, but it's going to take a certain scale of bettors at all levels across the country, perhaps across the continent eventually, to really help this gain as much traction as it needs to make a material impact over time.
Well said, Matt. Yeah, totally agree.
With that covered, guys, back to the previous question. Pisky, thank you for the detour. Hopefully we've cleared some things up or given some good context to those listening who may have heard about that little episode. Back to the task at hand. Doesn't have to be a sporting event, but it could be. How would you describe the best bet that you made while in Vegas for BetBash?
Well, I don't know if it's public knowledge. I know a lot of people in the industry know this about me. I am not a gambler. I am not a bettor. If I have an edge, I'm a pit bull. But without an edge, I lived in Vegas for 6 months during the 2022 football season, and Matt, I didn't once sit down at a table. Sure, the one arm bandits a little bit, when my parents are in town or I'm just strolling the strip with my girlfriend and stuff. But I am not a gambler at heart. I do not play poker. I do not play blackjack. I don't even know how to play craps. So for me, there wasn't much gambling, except the Godfather and I had to pop over to the Westgate because when I was there in 2022, I accumulated a bunch of player points because I was playing a lot at the Superbook, and the points expire. So last year when I was here for BetBash, a couple of the guys, we did some steak dinners at what was it called, Godfather? The
Edge.
Edge Steakhouse. Highly recommended, by the way. I think it's probably in the top 3 of my steakhouses of choice in Las Vegas. It's in the Westgate Casino. So we would do some dinners and stuff, and there were some leftover player points, and I think it was, I don't know, $400 or $500 still left. So I had to make a conscious effort to get over to the Westgate and put some action in on my player's card just to make sure the points lasted for, I believe I have another 13 months to use them. So that's good. So our one-arm bandit of choice, which is not a recommendation by any stretch of the imagination. Shout out to T-Bone. T-Bone's knows the advantage slot playing game. He's as good as they come. He clearly identified Pisky. No, you're having fun on that game, but there is no advantage to the player whatsoever. But it's top dollar. So the Godfather and I, every time we get to Vegas, we've had some great battles with top dollar. It's really exciting. It's our favorite slot machine. So I said, there's one. Let's sit down. Let's put some action in here so we can get the points back to, give us another 13 months to use them. And lo and behold, the first deposit didn't go so well. The second deposit, we got the first deposit back. I think it was 150% return. Oh my God, we broke Vegas. We came out winners, and then we stopped. We didn't gamble anything else anymore. It was done. Top dollar. We got the Westgate, one for the good guys, and that was it. That was the only bets that we made in Las Vegas. Aside from the Circa Millions,
of course.
Yeah, the Circa Millions that the Godfather and I will be doing this season. There's no more bingo machine. If you've been following me, and you're still following me after that debacle that happened last year with the stupid bingo machine, just think about if it would have won, though. If it would have won, I'd be the most talked about. I'd be bigger than GRP right now if it actually won. But it didn't, and it didn't lose either, so I couldn't even win the booby prize. But this year, the Godfather and I on the Always Betting podcast, we're going to do a weekly breakdown, entertainment purposes only. Don't you dare copy this shit. We're going to be sitting down and we're going to try to come to a consensus on our 5 picks for the Circa Million. So that's something to look forward to for all our viewers and listeners.
Yeah. Same.
All right.
Same for me, Matt. Sorry to interrupt. Same for me. I mean, I wanted to bring up the Circa Millions as my betting opportunity. I'm looking forward to it, and hopefully we can take at least a quarter or something. That'd be nice.
Hopefully. What kind of confidence is that?
It's not easy.
Jesus Christo.
But yeah, that's.
How about you, Matt? What was your best bet in Vegas?
Yeah.
Well, I was curious to hear you say that you guys came out ahead at Westgate with something on the non-sports betting side of the gambling space. And as a parallel on my end, I would say my best bet was staying up after the Legacy Club on Thursday night and throwing dice at the Circa craps table. I just so happened to go on the roll of my life. It was all luck, no skill, lightning in a bottle, but being in the right place at the right time with the right people next to Noops, Drew Dinsick, Scott from BetUS, Chinese Mike, some other bet bashers at the table. It was just a blast to go on a really hot roll and seeing Chinese Mike and some other guys the next day and just getting to bask in the afterglow of that was really, really special. Nice. I remember BetBash 3, Captain Jack going on an epic roll to end the event after the Legacy Club VIP party on the last night. he may have known what he was doing. He is an advantage player. I just got lucky, but again, right place, right time with the right people. Regression did come quickly in a subsequent crap session while I was still in Vegas after BetBash, but between the winnings and the rush of being on a heater in that setting, it was just surreal.
That is amazing. And you know what? I want to highlight that for a second because that I talked about my favorite part of BetBash being the after party up at the Legacy Club. The craps and the blackjack and everything, that's the after party. So if you still have any gas left in the tank, this is it. 7 to 10 is open bar at the Overhang Bar or Bar Canada, wherever they're going to host it. Then everyone goes up to the Legacy Club and drinks there till like 3 a.m. And then it's gambling time. And then all the big boys get down on the tables and they're whooping it up. And, I remember, again, the Godfather and I, not big players when it comes to that stuff, but I remember standing and watching Proline John and Sergio from Pinnacle and Johnny Betstamp. And Johnny Betstamp had a moment of, like, excitement that made me crack up so bad. He was looking around and just seeing all the faces and all the boys and all the girls and everyone together. And he's like, this is the best conference on the planet. Look at this. It's 3 a.m. and everyone is out. Everyone is here having a good time. So, I couldn't help but yeah, take that all in as well. And it's just a beautiful thing. It's beautiful. It's magic.
Couldn't say it much better. Glad that the gambling gods were kind to us, again, beyond just the sports betting realm. But guys, with this being a sports betting conference at heart, would you say there is perhaps a most actionable betting takeaway to come from your BetBash experience as well?
In terms of sports betting?
Yeah. In terms of sports betting specifically.
The betting takeaway from me, again, I have to circle back to the people. Because, I'm not a handicapper. I'm not an originator. I'm not a modeler. I'm none of that, right? I just surround myself and I make amazing connections. And you know what? People want to pick on me sometimes with the positivo thing. And it really has nothing to do with just how I comport myself. It's just a reminder to stay positive on social media. But just being a nice person. I have connected with some of the smartest people in this industry. And you know what? During the season, they pop up and just randomly DM me and start talking to me about edges that they have. And I'm like, okay, how can I help? And they're like, oh, I don't even need help. Here's what I'm on for the day and stuff like that. And I'm like, but I don't understand. Like, why are you sending me this? And, the response I get back is like, oh, you're just a good guy. I want everyone to eat. And I'm like, what? Wow. So you know what? Being a nice person in this industry, because it's so goddamn rare, there are so many fucking assholes out there, pardon my French, but being a good person in this industry, and I think it applies to every industry. If you're just a good person and you're friendly with people and you can have a conversation, good things are going to come your way. So for me, that's what it is. It's people are sending me shit and partnering with me and helping me out, doing the things that I need to do. And that's what comes out of it for me in the sports betting realm.
So, Pisky, I'm glad that you started with that. Godfather, I'll give you another moment to think this through if you want, because that is such a broadly applicable takeaway from something like BetBash. I will throw out a slightly more specific answer that will hopefully be enlightening to somebody catching this conversation, maybe one or the both of you as well. The Thursday morning college football panel featuring Bud Elliott and Breck McMurphy was really an eye-opener for me. I, of course, was aware that the expanded playoff is coming to college football, but the topic of load management may be coming to college football as a result. Ooh. The expanded playoff introducing the possibility of a 16-game season for teams that would play a 12-game regular season, conference title game, up to 3 rounds in the playoff as well. Something like this could manifest itself via second-half bets involving big favorites. And with a longer season, more playoff spots available, there's less need for style points now than there was before. And also, if we think about late season coaches' motivation, an example here could be a team like Utah. Their last regular season game is against UCF, but it's quite plausible that Utah could be in a spot where that game is irrelevant and all they need to do is win their conference championship game the next week to seal a playoff spot. So Utah might approach that game against UCF as a bye. So there might be a bit of a window of opportunity for factors like that. I also think NIL becoming a bigger deal in general may factor in here in the sense that deals for NIL typically last just year to year. So load management for established starters could also be an excuse for coaches to throw a bone to some of their younger blue chip recruits, get them some playing time, keep them happy and out of the transfer portal. One more thought here, just throwing out stuff that may or may not resonate with any bettors hearing this. This could potentially play out in Heisman voting. I think it was Brett McMurphy who noted that the last player to win the Heisman while missing a game that season was Charlie Ward back in 1993. Who knows how the season plays out? But I think it's important to be mindful of betting on someone to win the Heisman whose schedule could include one of those de facto late season buy spots when other candidates might be putting forth a Heisman moment.
That's
wow.
That's very in depth, and that is definitely actionable. There's no way I could add anything after that. But I'm, I'll just reiterate what Alex said. Pisky.
We might not be able to edit that one out, so
yeah,
there's a peek behind the curtain.
I'll just reiterate what Pisky said about the betting partnerships being from a first-time BetBasher to be something that definitely is an actionable item, and it's a great starting point to your path in sports betting in the industry.
I got to commend you, Matt. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's so great to hear that sentiment from somebody with your depth of experience, but also coming to this as a first timer with other people who may have been first timers with much less experience. Just the universal sentiment that seems to be coming out of an event like this. It's always so reassuring. I'm so glad to hear it from you, Godfather, and I hope that it continues to spread to many other future first-time attendees for years to come. Pisky, didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, I cut you off. My bad, my man. I just want to commend guys like you that actually dig in and to theories like this, and that actually dig down deep and do the studying and look into the schedules and stuff like that. I have been so far out of that part of the game for such a long time now. I'm a top-down bettor, right? If things don't make sense in the market, I kind of know how to read that stuff. So I think my job is a hell of a lot easier than your guys' job, where you're analyzing games and coaches and offensive lines and shit like that. I can't do that stuff. I never have been. Honestly, between us, hopefully this isn't live or anything, or will be broadcasted, but I don't even know how many people are on a football field. And the Godfather laughs. I swear to God, I don't. And I've been in the industry this long, but again, it's just I'm not saying my way is the right way, because it probably isn't. I could probably be a lot more knowledgeable in the space if I did take the time to study teams and trends and all this other stuff. But it just goes to show you that sports betting, you don't need to know all this stuff. There are other ways to earn in this industry aside from doing the bottom-up stuff. But the bottom-up stuff, I think the guys that are doing that deserve the most recognition, because in my opinion, it is by far the hardest way to earn a buck in this industry.
Agreed.
Well, to your point about not knowing how many people are on a football field, I think there's a famous story, I haven't confirmed whether or not it's true, that Spanky didn't know who Andrew Luck was. The night he retired and everybody's talking about it, for Spanky, that was like who's that? What does this matter? So yes, there are certainly ways to work smarter, not harder, if you will. And I appreciate the shout out to that end, but that was all information that I jotted down from guys like Brett McMurphy and Bud Elliott on that panel. So a lot of the benefit of a forum like BetBash is the opportunity to connect with people who I think are smarter than I am, and they can just really dive in and develop an expertise in a very specific area. And if I can just connect with a few people who are really sharp in college football, in the NFL, in markets that get way less attention than those two, where the edges might be a whole lot bigger, getting paid, maybe a different story, but letting everybody else really specialize. And as I often think of it on this show, curation being my form of creation, not reinventing the wheel myself, but trying to identify the best of the best when it comes to what's out there and just distilling that in a way that hopefully will add value to the audience in a digestible manner.
Very well said.
Yeah.
Yep.
Guys, we've covered a lot of good ground when it comes to the BetBash experience, some betting takeaways. I love to explore a bit when it comes to your own approaches to attending BetBash. This might land well with people who who have attended recently or who are considering attending for the first time in the future. Wondering about one thing you did this year that you plan to continue if and when you attend in the future. Pisky, for you, I'd love to hear it. Maybe something you did differently this time around that you didn't do your previous 2 times at BetBash. Godfather on your end, perhaps just one thing as a first timer that you're very glad to have worked into your approach to the event that, again, if and when you're back for BetBash 5 and beyond, you plan to carry with you. A bit of a jump ball. Whoever may have any thoughts first, feel free to hop in.
Well, Godfather, you want to go first? I got to think.
Yeah, I'll start because being a first timer, I can say that I enjoyed the Hall of Fame gala event the most, and yeah, I've got a solid tuxedo place now, and I look forward to dressing up, and I felt like I was at the Oscars, especially when they did the in memorandum section. So for me, that was my highlight, and I will play it that way anytime I come to BetBash.
That would be an honorable mention for me. I do have a different answer in mind, but the way that you guys arranged everything with the tuxes and just game planned accordingly to optimize for that Hall of Fame dinner really stood out. Pisky or Godfather, if you have anything else to add, feel free to share a little bit more, maybe peel back the curtain on how that all came into play and how you navigated the week of BetBash to still be in tip-top condition and looking as sharp as possible come the Hall of Fame dinner on Friday evening.
Yeah, you know what? That was something I discovered at BetBash 3. So last year, traveling from Canada, the last thing I want to do with this black tie recommended, business formal at the very minimum. The last thing I want to do is pack a suit in Canada in July, bring it over to Vegas, unpack it, iron it. I don't want to do that shit. So I just scoured the internet. I said, listen, I'm looking there's got to be a tux rental place somewhere. Downtown Las Vegas, an Elvis place. I don't give a shit. There's got to be something. So I found this great place. It's called Rent a Dress or Tux for all parties.
Dressmakers or bookmakers, welcome.
Yes.
Well played. Very well played. Yes. It's a 5-minute Uber from Circa. And you go there, you talk to Cynthia, you talk to Sarah, they bring you in, they put you on the little stand, and they take out the measuring tapes, they measure your arms, they measure your back, they measure your waist, everything. They get you all suited up, you try everything on, you pick out your jacket, you pick out your tie, you pick out your, I think that's it, maybe everything. Sure, yeah, you pick out everything. And they make it a super fun experience. They recognize us as the BetBash guys now. There were other BetBash attendees that showed up after our appointment. Make appointment in advance. Yep. And you know what? It is very cost effective, in my opinion. The fact that I don't have to bring a suit from Canada, it costs you $200 all in. And you pick it up. You go maybe a couple days in advance to get measured. They suit you up. You pick it up the day before. You wear it, and you drop it off the next day on your way to the airport. Bada boom, bada bing, you're done. And they love it. How'd you look this year? How did it feel? Like, we stole the show again. We look great. And they're like, okay, fantastic. See you next year? Yeah, of course. We'll see you next year.
We felt great. That's even more important.
Felt honestly, great. Looked great. It was amazing.
Pisk mentioned that it really wasn't that prevalent in BetBash 3. And the amount of people tuxed up, dressed up was significantly higher for BetBash 4. And I'm sure it will continue to grow. And I don't think Spanky and his crew are going to have to say black tie recommended anymore. I think there's just going to be black tie and there's going to be zero opposition to it.
Another great thing too, Matt, when you try this out, and I highly recommend, even if you're not going to the Sports Gambling Hall of Fame dinner, walking through Vegas casinos in a tuxedo is such a power move. It feels so goddamn good. All the eyes are on you. People are like, who the hell are these two guys, right? And the Godfather and I stayed at Golden Nugget, walking through the Golden Nugget, all tuxed up. Everyone's eyes on you, and especially the way home too at 3 a.m. or whatever we're doing. Everyone's looking at us saying, these guys know how to have a good time. So it just adds to the experience of what is already an unforgettable week at BetBash.
I might join the Tux Club next year because one of my takeaways from something I did differently this year that could make something like this more possible would be that I tried to plan more free time wherever I could. In previous years, I think I've overplanned, just trying to get every last ounce out of the experience. Again, a fine balance between trying to do too much and overextending yourself versus getting too much rest and not getting the most you can out of the week that is BetBash. But I really benefited from still having a plan this year, but also having built in enough flexibility if there was something spontaneous that made it appealing to join somebody else's plan, or just to enjoy some downtime to recharge, or perhaps next year to go get fitted for a tux, pick it up and drop it off at the airport on the way home, and not have to check a suit bag or an extra bag and worry about what kind of condition everything's going to arrive in.
Fair.
Exactly, Matt. And the one thing that I did differently, I'm just going to piggyback on what you said, is we had a nice dinner at Vic and Anthony's in the Golden Nugget. Basically, all the people that have helped us out this past season, all the people that we feel very close with, we were able to sneak that in after the pool party. You know, that was a kind of like an 8 o'clock finish, and we had that break from 8 o'clock until, I guess, after our drinks at the Legacy Club. So we ended up doing that, and I think that was phenomenal. It was nice to sit down and eat a nice real meal because the Godfather and I were at Saginaw just mowing down sandwiches. We were at the burger place mowing down burgers. It was nice to actually sit down and have a civilized meal with the people that we respect and that have, you know, worked great with us and will work great with us in the future. So that is something that I'm definitely going to do going forward. As soon as the new schedule comes out for BetBash 5, yeah, we're at 5. Yeah. BetBash 5, I am going to look for a slot that we can do that, and I'm going to build upon that. Next year's experience is going to be even bigger and better. And Matt, I'll make it official on Props and Hops here. You're invited to join the Godfather and I's dinner next year at BetBash.
Absolutely.
All right. I will look forward to crashing the party. I promise to have a proper beer in hand at that stage, and maybe also witness Mr. Espresso doing his thing with my own 2 eyes.
Thank you. Yes.
Well, guys, in the spirit of seeing both sides of the coin, plenty that we appreciate about the way that the event went, about how we approached the event this year. At the same time, I wonder if anything stands out reflecting back on last week that you might do differently if and when you're gearing up to attend BetBash 5.
You know what? The Unabated guys had a great idea of putting their logo on these little packs of, is it Liquid IV, I believe? Liquid IV, we have that up in Canada. It's called Liquid IV up here. Basically,
Maybe.
It's like a hydration.
Yeah, I
drink.
know some sort of hydration package just to dump in water and mix up, and that was a lifesaver during speed networking.
There you go. So I dropped the ball. I know the power of that stuff, and I meant to bring some with me. I will definitely be doing that next year. And the Godfather was gracious. He knows that I'm a fan of the gummies, and he just shared a video with me that apparently the best gummies in the city of Las Vegas we're not too far where we're staying from. And you know what? I'm looking at all you bet bashers, the guys that hooked up with the gummies and everything, all the recreational stuff. This is on all of us, but I think we screwed up. There was a video that surfaced a couple days ago that said the best gummies in Las Vegas were at a certain location, and none of us had the pleasure of trying it. So next year at BetBash, we're all going to be doing it, and we're going to be, apparently it's an out-of-body experience, which kind of freaks me out a little bit. I'm a lightweight when it comes to this shit, but I'm looking forward to at least dabbling a little bit. And again, the golden rule, know your limit, play within it. Hey, that was cheesy.
And if there's anything like Dead and Company going on at the Sphere, maybe you can sneak off campus for a bit and really put that experience into practice.
Shout out to Adam Orphan. He loves that stuff. Yeah, he's the best. And
highly
shout out to Adam as
recommended.
well. Yeah, yes. Adam's the man. Adam brought me some treats from Arizona. God bless you, Adam. You're the man.
I will jump in with a note that is going to maybe age myself a bit, but I think next year I'm going to go back to bringing physical business cards. I did this for BetBashes 2 and 3. This year, I tried a digital card to get with the times, but sharing it, especially during Speed Network, didn't always work very seamlessly. So I had prepped to share something with people that wasn't very easy to, get into their phones. I feel like again, maybe it's old fashioned, but there just seems to be a little less friction and maybe a bit more tact in handing somebody a business card versus trying to get it onto their phone. So
100%.
the physical business card probably going to be back in pocket for me next year at BetBash. I think my original answer may have been the Tux rental, but we've already touched on that. Definitely plan to join that club next year as well. Godfather, how about you? It seems like you were very pleased with the Tux rental, but any do-overs that you might like for the BetBash 5 experience?
I'll just make a quick comment about your business card point. Old school is the best school. So I would totally agree that that's the way you should be doing it. And, you know, your connections are vast, and I think that works better. Do-over for me, well, I think one do-over is I got to pace myself a little better. I guess the excitement of night one was a little bit too much. And, you know, night one with the open bar at the overhang, and then going on up to the Legacy Club. And, you know, we were fortunate enough to go up to the Legacy with Spanky himself. And, you know, let me tell you, walking into the Legacy lounge with Spanky, where he basically opened the bar with a "ow" to the bartender Dom, and just things really took off from there. I think if I had a redo, I'd probably pace myself a little bit better on night one, because day two was a little foggy, and you know, and then night two was, you know, you're gonna get back into it, and you know, it just was a cumulative effect for sure. So a do-over for me would be take it easy a little bit more and make better use of my time off. That was it for me from a first timer.
I know you better than you know yourself. Matt wants a do-over. There is one thing that you did over and over and over that entire trip that I know you will do over and over and over again next time. They got a 7.5. That's your hint.
Oh, well.
Give a shout out where shout out is due. Jesus, Jesus Christo, what are we doing?
Shout out to Jackpot's Coffee.
Thank you.
I must have had at least 20 espressos from there, because believe it or not, it is hard to get a good espresso in a lot of places that you would not expect it. We had a lovely meal at Vic and Anthony's, but again, I'm not here. I am not here to pile on the place. The meal was fantastic. The espresso, failing grade.
Needs work.
It needs work. So, you know, I don't know how they can cook a $100 piece of meat perfectly and then screw up a $4 or $5 espresso. I don't know.
Because it's a steakhouse. It's not a cafe. That's why.
No,
listen, we talked about
me and my people have an espresso after a meal. If the espresso is no good, it messes with the karma of the meal. Stop. Okay. So
back to you,
Jackpot's Coffee. So 7.5 for me, which I don't throw around.
He's a snob, so that's huge.
I'm an espresso snob. Okay, fine. But I'm sorry, that place has a decent espresso. Go there.
All right, I'm glad we covered that now, because I was going to be sure we got to it and make an exception when we talk some hops a bit later on to wrap the show and get some espresso tips, but we've already got that in the books now. Guys, before we wrap this up, a couple more questions to focus maybe on the people behind BetBash. I'm curious for your thoughts as to somebody you met for the first time last week whom you would most like to have on the Always Betting podcast as a future guest.
Oh, man, where do I begin? There were so many beauties. I'm telling you, like, God bless all of you attendees that came up and said hello to the Godfather and I and responded when we shook your hands. Like, the list it goes on and on and on. I mean, one guy that I want to give a special shout out to that I feel like was a gentleman since the moment I met him on the bus at 6 a.m. at the golf course. Obviously the tax man who I sat next beside, but he introduced me to Spooky. Spooky is
Yeah.
a gentleman. Gentleman. This guy took care of us the entire time. He had the inside edge at the overhang bar. Anytime the Godfather and I looked out of place and like, how do we get in here to get a drink? Spooky would put up his arm, give us the wave. We'd get in there. He said, don't worry, get anything you want. Sure, it was an open bar, but you got a tip or whatever. He's like, no, don't worry. I take care of all of that. These are my people. So I just want to say a sincere thank you and pleasure to meet you, Spooky. Great gentleman. The jacket, are you kidding me? This guy won the Circus Survivor, I believe. He shows up in the blue jacket. The blue jacket
awesome.
At the Legacy Club. I don't think it gets any better than that. You know, there's a lot of people that like to talk shit on Twitter and all this down, the smartest guy in the room, whatever. This guy has the jacket. Where's your jacket?
Yeah. Precisely.
There you go. So my MVP is going to be Spooky, but honestly, the list of people that we want to bring on the podcast that offered to come on the podcast is infinite because like the Godfather and I are normal guys, right? We're not looking for the smartest guys in the industry to come on here and, you know, break down math and all this shit. We're regular human beings. So if you have a little bit of a gambling story, a little bit of a betting story, you lost it all, you won it back, you got arrested, anything. That's what Always Betting is about. That's what we stand for. We're the regular people of the industry that tell it how it is. So anyone at that event can be on our podcast, including the cocktail servers. So reach out to us, DM us, come on to the podcast. We'd love to have you. And thank you all again for just being amazing and honestly making the trip for the Godfather and I.
Speaking of the cocktail servers, one of them already has been on the podcast for those who have caught the 100th episode of the Always Betting Pod, making a nice cameo with Spanky, as I recall. But I felt yes. Yeah. I felt that, I mean, maybe more not a cocktail server. That's the misnomer. But Dom, right. If we want to delineate the bartenders at the Legacy Club, you may have been referring to like cocktail servers at the casino. But anybody and everybody. I love the all welcoming approach. And I was really, I think, encouraged by a lot of opportunities on my end as well, because when I started doing the show back in 2020, just about 4 years ago on the nose, there were so many people who I felt like I respected, had sharp opinions, but maybe didn't have the biggest following yet. So it was great to have people on who I thought I had a good read on somebody's being a great guest. And it's great to see that somebody who may have come on my show early on in their journey has since kind of blown up in a good way, gotten a much bigger profile, and now they're making appearances all over the place, and good for them. But across gambling Twitter, it's become increasingly difficult for me to find those diamonds in the rough, if you will. And at BetBash, not necessarily diamonds in the rough, just great people beyond the little bubble that I keep on my feed on Twitter. In fact, somebody who I guess a lot of people knew would be there or were quick to make an introduction to, I didn't know who Taylor Mathis was prior to last week. And I know she has a massive following, so that's more of an oversight on my part. But when I got to speak with her a little bit, it was funny to think about a lot that we have in common. She likes to focus on props a good bit. That's in the name of this show. So I was like, okay, that's quite interesting. And then she has a journalism background, as do I. And then there are certainly things from her life experience that I will never be able to relate to in any way. But there were also some things that she said on the women in betting panel beyond the betting realm that really resonated with me. So I thought that could be a really fun, well-rounded conversation to potentially line up before too long. And there were a lot of other people likely to make their Props and Hops debuts as a result of relationships built last week. One more I'll mention, Matthew Friedman. He hosted a fantasy football seminar. I wasn't able to attend it, but I was able to catch up with him throughout the rest of the conference. In fact, we had a great craft beer conversation near the end of the VIP cocktail party at the Legacy Club on Friday night. So I feel like he's the type of guest who would be on brand, as both of you are, when it comes to both the props and the hops. So I just felt like, as much as it's been a struggle lately to try to find new up-and-coming voices on gambling Twitter, they're out there. Part of it is on me for just maybe not being good enough at finding them now relative to 4 years ago. BetBash is a treasure trove of bright minds when it comes to betting or interesting stories beyond the realm of sports betting that could still probably hit home with quite a few people.
100%, man. Yeah, there are so many beauties out there, and these are genuinely good people. Like, I can't stress that enough. You know, even some of the guys online that, I thought, oh, maybe this guy's a little bit of an asshole. You meet them in person, and I'm like, huh, you're not an asshole at all. You're actually like a cool dude. They're like, yeah, I get picked on online a little bit, so, I have to be a little bit of a tough guy on there. I'm like, wow. Okay. All right. Good. All right. Another cool dude in my book, So, yeah, Matt, I encourage, anyone that's out there that will want to come on. You run a great podcast. You're an easy guy to talk to. You're relatable. And that's all that this is. You get them on here, you're talking. Everyone has a gambling story. Everyone has a betting story. It might not be on sports betting. It might not be on blackjack. But you know what? If you took that chance to ask that girl on the date, that's a betting story. That's always betting. So I think there's so many different ways that we can run with this. And especially you and you're including the the hop stuff. Like, there's so many different ways that you can do it, and there's nothing but good people out there. I can't say enough about all the attendees at BetBash.
Well said. And Godfather, I wanted to make sure to bring you into this too. Did anybody stand out in your book as a possible future guest on the show?
I would be remiss if I did not mention for months prior to BetBash, one individual, he publicly would state on Twitter that the number one person that he wanted to meet at BetBash was myself, the Godfather, and that is Scott, Vegas horse player. And I am telling you, at first I didn't think anything of it, but it was a steady and like the first night we were there, he was like even tweeting then, where is Ben Godfather? And so I finally got a chance to meet him in person, and he was a super solid individual. And he runs a proxy service for the Circa Millions and Circa Survivor, and I know that Pisky uses him as well, and I can definitely give out a shout out to Scott, Vegas horse player. Horse pools. Okay, sorry. I can give a shout out to him as a super individual. A pleasure to meet him, and the service he gives is top notch. And somebody that I would love to have on the podcast that we haven't had, that is I found him he would fit in with myself and Pisk. Sammy P. Just his sense of humor aligns, his self-deprecating sense of himself. I really enjoyed meeting him for the first time in person, and I would love to have him on the podcast.
Those are two great shout outs. I recall meeting Sammy P for the first time at BetBash last year, and I didn't think he would know who I was, but I think his first words, as we're shaking hands, his first words are crossover episode. I'm like, all right, let's do it. And it took a minute, but we got it in for March Madness this year. And yeah, he's always such a, so many great people here, but I feel like his light just shines the brightest when it comes to, if I'm in the same room with anybody, there's something special about interacting with him. And I don't have as much experience with the proxy service that Scott runs, but I'm in it this year. This is my first time giving a go at Circa Survivor. And he also organizes a lunch on the Monday of BetBash. I think that'll continue as long as the conference continues with like the Tuesday night opening through Friday night conclusion. But I think for a few years now, Scott has done a lunch the Monday of BetBash week. So for those who can get into town early enough for it, that's a great way to meet him. Spanky shows up. I know that Adam Bjorn does some stuff with Scott as well. So some legends in the space, in an even smaller setting than something like maybe the Legacy Club one night at BetBash. It's, again, another way to get great access to some great people. And I'm so glad that Scott puts that on. He's really taken it upon himself to contribute as much as he possibly can to the entire week and even beyond the official BetBash schedule. So aligned on that shout out to Scott, everything he puts into the event, and look forward to giving the proxy service a go this season as well. Hopefully for more than a week or two, but we'll see how that goes come September.
Best
Guys,
of luck there.
Nice.
Yeah, the Godfather and I decided to back away from Survivor. We got enough on our plate, especially with this Circa Millions and making the picks on camera and stuff. That's going to be new. But yeah, Scott is top notch, super reliable. I remember last year when I was kind of out of the contest, so it was in the back of my mind. I missed the pick deadline. I think the pick deadline was like 10 Eastern or something like that. At 10:02, my phone is blowing up. Boy, there's text messages, there's emails, there's DMs to the Godfather, there's a phone call. So Scott is a beautiful individual, and he really, what he does, he puts his full 100% effort into things, and you can tell that he's solid right out of the gate. So shout out to him, and I'm looking forward to working with him again this year with the Millions.
All right, good. Between the million and with the Survivor contest, we've got that covered, both of those bases. And Pisky, building on what you said at the start of that last remark, also want to make sure to get any thoughts that you guys can share when it comes to the Always Betting podcast. Again, recently celebrated 100 episodes in grand fashion. Anything you can reveal about plans for the future of the podcast?
That's a lot about what we talked about in Vegas. I'm still on the fence about releasing our Vegas episode because it was a very small crowd, and there were some very intimate conversations that I think I have to review the tape, but I think I gave away. I may have said a little more than I should have, so we're going to see about that. But one of the things that we did touch on is what we're going to be doing for season 4 of Always Betting. I can't believe it. Like, this started as a little bit of a joke. We're going to tell a few stories, bada bing, bada boom. Here we are 3 years later. We did 100 goddamn episodes. Shout out to the Full Dog. He was there for half of them with me. Shout out to the Godfather, who's been there for 3/4 of them. And shout out to all our amazing guests that have come on and made my job a hell of a lot easier, because the Godfather and I can argue about everything, and some people find that entertaining. I have no idea why, but it gets old after a while. And you know what I mean? And like we as frenemies, we kind of have to get along sometimes too. So it's hard to argue all the time. So no, thank you everyone for tuning in for 100 episodes, and thank you to our guests and the people who contribute to it. But for season 4 of Always Betting, again, we're going to have the weekly Circa Millions selection show. That is going to be, we're going to put a timer on it because I want to try to get this thing onto TikTok. TikTok has a maximum of 10 minutes. So the Godfather thinks I'm out of my mind for saying that we're only giving ourselves 10 minutes to make 5 picks, but we're going to try to do it. We're going to see how week 1 goes, and we'll feel it out from there to see where we go with it. But that's the plan going forward. We're also going to be trying to do some live streaming. So if you like the Godfather and I, and you like how we react to things, you should see us on a college football Saturday, because we are busy in front of the screens, and we're thinking about flipping on the cameras and doing something like this, something on StreamYard where you can converse with us, you can send us DMs, you can put in messages, you can watch the Godfather sweat about betting some Guatemalan soccer game. I think there's an entertainment value there. Now, again, I got to be careful and give privacy where privacy is due. I don't want to give away too much about what we do and how we do it, but I do think there is an entertainment factor there. So we're going to be trying that out when the college football season starts, a couple live streams. We'll see how it goes. And instead of being force-fed to the mic every single week and we have to pull topics out of our ass, we're going to present ourselves in front of the mic when we have something to say. So if there's something that transpires with one of the websites that we're using, or something big in the sports betting industry, or something big in our lives that we want to talk about, then we're going to sit in front of the mics, do an episode. And same with our guests. I want our guests to come in and not necessarily do a marathon episode that's an hour and a half long. I think that's taxing on not only the producers, but the listeners, right? I don't want to keep you guys here for that long. So I'm thinking one solid topic. You have a good betting story or something. You have something good to share with the Godfather and I. We fire up the mics. We do it in a quick half an hour form with one subject. And I kind of want more meat and potatoes in our episodes going forward. So that's the plan going forward. But again, as you see, as me describe all that, it is very up in the air. We're going to see how things go, and we're going to feel it out. And whatever feels right, that's what we're going to move forward with, because between the betting that we do and all the other social media stuff and the crypto stuff and everything else that goes into making this thing of ours what it is. We got to make sure that we're presentable and entertaining for all you guys when you give us your time on the podcast.
All right. Well, some people hearing this might be wishing that I had taken the approach of trying to fit this episode into the 10-minute TikTok threshold or a half an hour limit.
Impossible.
We would be on our 9th TikTok video at this point, going by that 10-minute tracker, and about our third 30-minute chapter. Maybe we can wrap this up before we roll that over into a fourth 30-minute segment here. But before we can do that, also want to be sure to weave in the 2 pillars of this show, starting with the hops. Guys, how would each of you describe your best drinking experience while in Vegas for BetBash?
Godfather, you want to start or do you want me to go first?
Well, I'm partial to my Negronis and G&Ts, and there were plenty of them to be had. And one thing, I'm not sure if it's a new thing, being my first BetBash, but a lot of really interesting shots were being they would come by on a platter, and I mean tequila, but there was a green tea that I had that was like stupendous, and then another drink. I said, "What's that?" And they said, "Well, it's an espresso martini." And I just stopped at espresso. I said, "I'll take 2 of them," and I had, and they were delicious. So to me, that kind of stands out for me, though, the extra libations that were available, very unique ones at that. I enjoyed those a lot.
The only beer I had at BetBash, because it seemed like it was the only thing available, not because I support Italian beers, was Peroni's up at the Legacy Club. But yes, the shots, I'm looking right into the camera, this one. That's Whalesbet. That's Whalesbet, our friend from the Czech Republic. It was a pleasure meeting you, but you're a troublemaker. There was a lot of shots in the vicinity of this kid. You know what I mean? He just pulled off a very impressive, I think he was the Circa Survivor? No, Millions. I think he finished 5th in Circa Millions. And great individual. It was such a pleasure meeting him. Kid. But yes, we discovered that on Twitter. A lot of people were saying, I got really drunk when and Whalesbet just seemed to always be in the area. So I know he was the one starting the fire. Also, Jake from Spanky's team, he was shoving tequila down my throat. I don't give in to peer pressure, but when it's good people and they're telling you, this is the last one, but he told me that 3 times this is the last one. So, I got to give him a little bit of shit. Yeah, I got to give him a little shit. A little bit of shit as well. Those green tea ones were great. Shout out to Nina, the server. Again, Spooky's girl. He had everything. He was so well connected in there. This guy. He had connections to everything. It was really incredible. But
great individual. I
got to go back to the original. Nolito, my barber, who is the gem of Las Vegas. This guy is the best barber in the state of Nevada, okay? I'm just going to put it out there. This guy told me how we hit it off is like, Pisky, you got to go. You're new to Vegas. You got to go have an old-fashioned at the Legacy Club. And the old-fashions at the Legacy Club are top-notch. Probably the best. No, definitely the best old-fashions I've ever had. And, you go see our guy Dom. You tell him you're friends with Pisky and the Godfather, and I guarantee you he will take care of you. So shout out to Legacy Club and Circa, Derek Stevens, Jeffrey Benson. Everything at Circa is amazing. That's what makes BetBash so great. So there you go. Circa Sports. Beautiful.
No qualms whatsoever on my end with anything either of you just shared. I will note that my favorite drinking experience came during the beer share. Myself and Zach White and a couple other guys helped to organize during the Wednesday open bar party at the Overhang Bar at Circa. I realize it may sound crazy to bring your own beer to an open bar, but it did take the experience to another level. Patrick Everson of Vegas Insider brought a boatload of beer from his nephew's brewery, Telluride Brewing Company in Colorado. Zach White, pro bettor, owner of Salty Turtle Beer Company in Surf City, North Carolina, brought a big supply of Salty Turtle beer as well as merch. In fact, I've got my Salty Turtle shirt on.
Wow, I'm going to have to try some.
Throw that onto the camera view for those catching this on YouTube or in Spotify, where video will be available as well. Also, JD Sparks brought some beer called Spotted Cow by New Glarus. This is a classic craft beer you can only get in Wisconsin, so to see it in Vegas is always a real treat. And then to hold up my end of the bargain, I brought a 4-pack of cans plus a bottle of a stout with me from California. I think the highlight beer of the entire night was that stout. I'm just going to run through it briefly here. I think it deserves it. The beer is called Blessed Purr. It's by Horace Aged Ales in Oceanside, California, my hometown, a collaboration with Anchorage Brewing up in Alaska. This is a bourbon barrel-aged imperial stout with vanilla and coconut. A lot going on here. 21.66% ABV. Hard to say that and realize it's a beer. But the heat that you get from that ABV, plus some of the bourbon barrel character, perfectly complemented the sweetness from the vanilla and coconut. So it wasn't too boozy or too sweet. And even some of the people at the beer share who generally don't like stouts said that one was a hit. I would say it was unforgettable, but I guess you don't always remember everything after drinking a beer that's 21.66% ABV.
Oh, that dude, that's a panty dropper. 21%. Holy.
That
good
sounds
Lord.
harsh.
Yeah.
Now,
in 2 to 3 ounce increments, it's pretty good. That's a good cap.
You did mention JD. JD is another one of my highlights. I got to give that kid a shout out. I love that guy. That guy is such a beauty. He's coming up there in January. He told me he's coming to Toronto. JD, I'll see you in January. And I noticed your beer sharing event, Matt. I walked by, and the biggest smile at the table was our mutual friend that I got to meet last year. Such a great guy. Mike from Chicago. Rossetti?
Oh, Mike Roselli. Yes.
Right, Roselli. Beautiful individual. Like this guy, I can't get enough of this guy. I can't get enough of him. And I know his BetBash was cut a little bit short. He's a family man now, and congrats again, because I know he had to rush out from BetBash last year. But man, oh man, what a gentleman. And I can't say enough good things. And yes, Mike, if I ever come to Chicago, you're the first call I'm making.
Good call. And yeah, I consider Mike my BetBash best man. We have been to all 4 of them together, including the first one in Jersey City. I flew from California. He flew in from Chicago. Wow. We were there together, and he will be out with his wife and their very young son out in Southern California in a couple months. So Mike and I will probably throw back a few hops that may be re-emerging on this show in future segments. Nice. Guys, one final question to wrap this up on a proper note. The Malinsky Minute as a nod to the late, great sports betting legend, David Malinsky, who, again, it was great to see honored as part of the in memoriam video they showed during the Hall of Fame dinner. I think that while that was a very nice touch by spanking the BetBash team, and I hope to see Dave honored with an induction in an upcoming Sports Gambling Hall of Fame class, if all goes well, fingers crossed. Really, guys, in the spirit of BetBash honoring legends in the space, I would love each of your thoughts on one person who's no longer with us, but who shaped the better and perhaps also the person that you've become.
Well,
it's a big question, perhaps. I know this is off the cuff, so take a moment if you need it.
That is a big question. But first, I want to say something about Dave Malinsky. So the Godfather and I, when we, the reason why we're so tight, the father and son thing here, is that we worked together at the Ontario Lottery and Gaming Corporation in Ontario for 13 years, side by side, making all the odds for the people of Ontario. When I used to drive in to the office on Sunday mornings, I used to always listen to David Malinsky on the talk radio. I can't remember what station it was, but he was super informative. He was a great listen. And when I met you, Matt, and I learned about your relationship with him, it was like, holy shit, like, talk about small world and worlds colliding and stuff like that. It really meant a lot, and I really respect you for honoring him and continuing to honor him on a regular basis. I know you do your hikes up at Mount Charleston. I did some hiking up there too when I was living in Vegas. My girlfriend's a fitness freak. She was dragging me up and down that goddamn mountain. But yeah, kudos to you for always remembering David. And he was a very insightful guy. And especially for someone like myself that, again, doesn't know a whole lot about the sport. I feel like I could just, I piggyback off people. And David Malinsky used to be one of those guys that I would listen to him go in, and then I'd go into the office and tell the Godfather, hey, listen, I know something about Indianapolis, Denver, and Oakland. And listen up. And it would be basically voicing the words of David Malinsky. So I really wanted to share that. In terms of people that have passed, oh, man. There was another guy.
Maybe if that's too narrow of a question, if there's somebody, if they haven't passed, if they're still alive, maybe it'd be great because they could still be around to hear something along these lines. But somebody who you look up to, maybe a legend in your book that has shaped you both as a bettor and as a person.
You know what? This is probably a very easy answer, but I want to give Spanky a shout out. And I know it's pretty obvious because he is the organizer and all this, but I was going back and forth with him in text this morning, and I just laid it out there. I said, man, you may not know this, and I'm not a bullshitter, right? If there's anything that I provide to this industry is that I am a straight shooter and I tell things how it is, and I would never bullshit about anything. I told him, dude, what you've created here is something very special, and I'm sure you hear that all the time. But BetBash has literally changed my life with the opportunities and friendships that I've made. Look at this. What other place can you sit down for an hour and 35 minutes and shoot the shit with someone that I feel like I've known for 25 years? Yet we met a couple years ago at BetBash. So these are lifelong friendships. I'm going to give another shout out to Plus EV that put out a tweet that says something like, I think the most Plus EV play might be the friends we made along the way. And I have to agree with that. That is the absolute best part. I am making lifelong friends here, and we get to collaborate and help each other out and push each other to the next level and encourage each other and help each other in a difficult industry that everyone thinks is impossible to beat, which all these smart people have proven that it's not. I just think Spanky for putting it all together, and me as a kid coming into the industry, 2003, I started working at a random call center. It was an offshore sports book that dealt with BetUS and also dealt with a credit shop, and I used to get calls every day from not Spanky himself, but someone on Spanky's team, because the password of Spanky, and I could tell by the way they were betting, that it was him. And I tell him about this all the time. He's like, bro, I've had so many goddamn accounts in this. He goes, I apologize. I don't remember this. And to be fair, I don't think I was speaking with him. But I know that I was taking phone calls from him when I was a young kid in 2003. Over 20 years ago, getting into the industry, and he is still around. Do you have any idea how hard that is to do? To stay in action, as Roxy Roxborough says, it is next to impossible, and this guy's done it, and he's doing it with class and putting together great minds in a great room, and it's improving life for all of us. So kudos to Spanky. I'm going to give my shout out to him because I really, truly believe that he deserves it.
Well said.
That's well said. Absolutely, I'm going to agree with.
Yeah, follow that up, Godfather.
Well, yeah, I mean, you did well there, and it's well placed.
It's the hops. It's the hops.
It's well placed. Spanky does deserve all and any accolades that are going to go his way. He is a pit bull with this. He is going to continue to make it better and better. I have no doubt whatsoever. To answer your final thought, Matt, for me, a couple of people, one that's no longer with us, and I definitely don't have an issue with dating myself, but this was one of the first people that used to handicap football games, and it was Jimmy the Greek on CBS in the 70s when I was a young boy, and I had this fascination with NFL football. And so Jimmy the Greek for me was I would watch him and I was just hooked right then and there, like 8 years old, mid-70s.
And if I recall, was a lot of that done with a wink and a nod at the time, given the landscape of betting legalization and what could go on broadcast TV?
Correct. He was always sort of walking on eggshells with his his lines, and yes, he could not say that, this had anything to do with betting, but it was always at halftime and always in the pregame show. He would come on. I was absolutely affixed to the TV, and it was because of Jimmy the Greek that I got the bug as well. And another person that I think is a pioneer is Jimmy Vaccaro, and I was really happy to meet Jimmy in person at this BetBash, my first. So Jimmy Vaccaro, Roxy Roxborough, when you meet people like that, I mean, it's fantastic.
I think that's a very proper way to tie a bow around this conversation. I would like to, at this point, thank the audience for tuning in. I'll be back next week, likely with a special guest to preview college football. In the meantime, if you're not doing so already, please go ahead and follow Pisky on Twitter at piskypositivo. Follow Godfather at bengodfather, and follow the Always Betting podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Guys, I had a blast with you at BetBash last week. Thank you to Spanky and the entire BetBash team for another phenomenal event. Thank you to both of you for joining the show tonight to relive the experience. And best of luck to both of you with the podcast moving forward and in your betting endeavors this coming football season.
Thanks, Matt. It was a pleasure meeting you in person. You are a gentleman in this industry. And thank you for having us on your podcast to do this recap.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Matt. You're a beauty. Thank you for inviting us. And man, we can do this for hours and days and months and weeks and everything. We could go on forever here. But yeah, no, thanks for having us on again. You're such an easy guy to talk to. Keep pressing, keep pumping out the content, man, because I'm positive that it's going to take all of us to a very special place. So let's keep pumping it out.
Cool. Thank you very much. I think it's maybe a year and a half or so from round 1 to round 2 for you guys on this show. We will look to compress that time frame come the gap between round 2 and a subsequent round 3.
Awesome.
Sounds good, my man. Best of luck this season.
Thanks so much. Absolutely.